Hi, my name is Grace Ruppert. I am 20 years old and I am an emergency management student at Frederick Community College. I have been an online student here for about a year and a half now, and I'm on track to graduate soon. And yes, I'm very excited. I would say my community college path has been a little different, I guess, um, than some people's. A lot of people work and go to school, which is really admirable. I think that's a hard thing to do, and I think it's really awesome. I guess for me is when I could do the classes online pre-COVID, I was like, this is awesome. It gives me mobility. I can be somewhere new. I can be doing my classes at night or in the morning and just kind of get it done while doing something else. So I took a position as a volunteer in Canada, in the Northwest Territory of Canada. And last year, so last spring semester, I was living up there while taking my classes for Frederick online. Um, that got cut short. I actually finished the semester back home in Maryland because of the COVID pandemic started. I flew home, but for majority of the semester, I was in Canada. It presented some challenges as there was a time difference. So that affects due dates and submitting things online and times of meetings. But, after kind of getting a hang of it and getting myself into a routine with work, I was able to balance my life up there and my work for Frederick, and it all worked out really well. Yes. So I filled out an online application to volunteer with a group. They're the Felician Sisters of North America. They're a Catholic order of nuns. And so they have various service sites throughout the world, and they'll bring on volunteers to assist them at their sites. There's one in Haiti, there's a few in South America, and there's one in Pittsburgh. They're actually based out of Pittsburgh, and they have one in Canada. And so I filled out an application online just kind of on a whim, like, oh, this looks interesting. And then they called me, they interviewed me, and they asked me if I would be interested in going to Canada. um, so I don't honestly couldn't tell you why I said yes. I really hate the cold. I hate winter. But I just had this gut feeling that I should do it. And the fact I could do school and be up there at the same time, I was just kind of like, why not? So I went up there around Christmas time of last year, 2019, and I was a volunteer in an indigenous community. The community has a population of about 500 people, so very small, very remote. The closest city is Yellowknife, which is the capital of the territory. It's about an 18-hour drive. And I did some community outreach activities. I worked with the youth there. I was a volunteer in a preschool. I also helped coach after school sports. I helped coach basketball. I chaperoned a couple hockey trips. And I mostly worked with children up there. And it was really an amazing experience because I got to know a completely different culture, climate, group of people. I familiarized myself a lot more with indigenous culture, which is something that I felt completely ignorant to most of my life. So I would say personal growth wise, it was really good for me. And then it was just also great to be able to be part of those people's culture in everyday life. I was kind of thinking, this is a big paper and this is my final product. I want something that means something to me personally and something that I feel passionately about because that's what prompts most writing. And I really do enjoy writing about things that I want to write about. So that's kind of I was racking my brains and I was trying to think, what what should I do? And so I started thinking a little bit. My time in Canada kind of piqued my interest in Indigenous culture, and it had me just Googling and exploring a lot more about Indigenous people, Native Americans in the United States. And so I was thinking, and I was like, okay, emergency management, Native Americans. And so I came up with an idea to write about tribal relations between the tribe and the federal government as they work very closely um, within the emergency management system. So yeah, it that idea kind of hatched from just experience and interest, and yeah, yeah. So biggest thing I learned, research is very limited. I kind of was really angry at myself in the beginning of the paper because I was like, oh wow, this is such an awesome topic. And then I went to search it and I just was having a really hard time finding what I was looking for. I feel like a lot of my research was reading similar things and kind of having to connect the dots. One thing that I learned that I thought was really interesting and that I wrote about in my capstone paper was um, pertaining to disaster mitigation and the Native American belief system. And so every tribe is different and they each foster a unique set of beliefs and cultures and yada yada, but there are a lot of similarities between them. And so something I found in more than one tribe was that the act of mitigating disasters is against a lot of spiritual beliefs within the tribe, um, based on whatever the belief is, that like this disaster is happening for a reason, or the earth, or whatever God or whatever spirit they believe in, it's happening for a reason, and them trying to prevent it and act against it is contrary to their belief system. So I hope I did a good job explaining that. It's a little confusing as the beliefs depend per tribe, but I just thought that was a really interesting concept because it kind of is counterintuitive to like FEMA's mission, like, oh, mitigation, this and that. And it kind of got the gears going, well, how can these two groups work together to keep the community safe when this very concept is viewed so drastically between the two? So after reading that, I was like, wow, this, it just kind of, it changes everything, and it's very interesting. So within my paper I wrote about three main concepts that I think are very important, and they all fall under the umbrella of cultural competency. But I wrote about the difference in belief systems. I wrote about the difference in communication styles, mainstream American communication style, very direct, very blunt, and there's a lot of value in words. A lot of times, more quiet people are viewed as standoffish or not friendly, while as in Native American culture, a lot of the times it's kind of opposite. There's a value to silence. Tribal elders are always put first, they speak first, they eat first. And there's just major differences. So, yeah, after the belief system, communication is another one I touched on. And then the third one that I wrote about was about the history of Native Americans, and that is a long, long history. But I think especially from the time that European settlers came here. I think that marks a really important time in their history, and just the drastic changes and things that they have gone through as a community are really important to be educated upon. It's hard to fully understand those things because, how can you? But, to be educated and have some form of knowledge of those happenings, I think is very important. So those three things, the beliefs system, communication, and history, I kind of highlighted all three of those. And then my kind of recommendation is that um, on the federal government side of things, I just wrote that there should be a mandatory training in place for working with tribes. Um, and I kind of came to that conclusion because within each of the 10 FEMA regions, there's only one tribal liaison. And I thought that was interesting, especially in areas like, around Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. There's a lot of tribes. So I would think, on the West Coast, there would be more liaisons, but each FEMA region only has one. But more than one person works with the tribes. A lot of people do, but there's only one liaison. And so I thought, I feel like when FEMA employees, when they do their basic training in Anniston, Alabama, or wherever they may go,
Mhm.
I think there should be a mandatory kind of cultural competency training in place at that training facility. And, it doesn't have to be long or anything, but I feel like just kind of, hey, tribes exist. We work with tribes, and hitting on those things of the belief system, the communication, and the history of those tribes in the FEMA training. I think that would is very important. And I think that could really be a game changer to the ability to work with and understand differences when working with Native American tribes. There have been steps made in relations with FEMA and tribal government. For example, tribal government was treated as a local community. They had to, if they had a disaster on their reservation, they had to first go to the state, who then went to FEMA for aid. And down the line, I guess they realized this doesn't really make sense because a lot of tribes, the reservation, it is in more than one state. A lot of them cross boundaries. So it's like, how do you work that out? And so I feel like the step that they made in establishing that tribes have that direct line of communication with FEMA, like that's important and that's a big deal. That direct line of communication may not be awesome, but it's a start and there's room for improvement. And then also just in a lot of FEMA documents, the way things are listed, it's like in federal, state, local, and tribal communities. And, not to like nitpick words, but tribes are, reservations are sovereign. So if you think about it kind of in a hierarchy in your head, it should really be, you know, federal, tribal, state, local, and just I feel like kind of putting them at the end of the list, not to nitpick words because that's the least of the problem, but it I think it speaks volume, and I think it's interesting. What am I going to do next? So, I work full time, so I'm currently still working, and my job is I work in a school, so it's done with in the beginning of June, so I'm just about done work as well as school. Um, so moving forward, being completely honest, I do not have a plan, really at all. I have a lot of goals, but I'm still kind of forming the stepping stones to getting there. I don't know. I feel a lot of peace in that. I'm really proud of what I've accomplished so far, and I want to do a lot more. Um, I'm really interested in working in the nonprofit field. Um, I just kind of am figuring out how that plays out. I would be interested in maybe working for an organization that does emergency management, but on a global level, like internationally. I think that is a really awesome mission. I'm also interested in working in the states. I don't know if that would be in the form of a state level emergency management agency or for FEMA. I'm really open to a lot of things. I just, it sounds corny, but I really do want to bring about about a positive change. And there's a lot of things that I have observed just in the short past couple years since I've been in high school. And I feel like they've opened my eyes a lot and changed my perceptions of different different things. And yeah, I think I would just like to continue to explore and learn new things and put whatever ability I have forward to improving the emergency management system as a whole, not only on a national level, but on a global level. I would say there are two main pivotal events in my life that have just kind of made me feel like, oh, like like an epiphany almost. So I don't have to get way into it, but when I graduated high school, I didn't know what to do with myself at all. I didn't even know what emergency management was. I didn't know. And when I did FEMA Corps for a year, which is an AmeriCorps service program that does disaster recovery, I loved it. I totally loved it. And I think a big changing moment for me was responding to Hurricane Michael in Panama City, Florida. I was down there for a couple months in 2018. I lived in a responder camp, and it was really hard. The devastation people face there is really horrible. I still think about them every day. Um, but yeah, that was a moment for me where I'd never really seen the harsh impacts of disaster, especially I don't know, where I live here in Maryland. We don't experience typically very extreme hurricanes, things like that. So seeing that was a big moment for me. And that's kind of where, when I started feeling a lot of passion for emergency management. Um, and I would say the second one for me is what I was talking about earlier when I was in Canada, and just kind of listening to people and hearing what they've been through, what a lot of Indigenous communities have been through. And I don't know, I was like, didn't learn any of this in school, number one. um, but also, I just felt very ignorant to it, especially living on the East Coast. I don't know anyone that is Native American. I have never really interacted with anyone that's Native American. I couldn't even name a Native American tribe on the East Coast. And just kind of learning uh, history a little bit more and people's experiences through listening, that was just a game changer for me too. So I would say those two moments kind of, yeah, they just opened my eyes to a different side of things, different everything. And I feel like a way with my capstone paper, I weirdly brought these two kind of obscure experiences I had together, and they fit together. And yeah, I think those were kind of two pivotal moments for me. I would just say make sure you care about it. I hope that's not like too obvious, but yeah, I just feel like if you don't care about it, then what's the point? That's kind of part of the reason I didn't go to college right away is because I didn't really care, and I didn't feel super passionate about one thing. Um, which is okay, your passions can be multiple things, but I think, whatever you choose, whatever you want to study, whatever your reason is to go to college, pick something you care about because, that's what makes cramped hands writing the paper late at night worth it. That's, what makes eye strain on your computer worth it. And that's it. I just think it is very rewarding and very meaningful when it's something you're passionate about and something you can feel in your heart as well. I know that's corny, but yeah, that would be my advice is don't just go to college because you're supposed to, go because you care about something.